We are on Membet Amud Aleph 42a, right at the top of the Mishnah. We're doing a full daf today. Ezrat Hashem. Here we go. Hamoder hana mechavero lifnei shevi'it. A person says to his friend, we're not benefiting from you. You're not benefiting from me. And he tells this then before Shemitah. In Israel, the 7th year, the Shemitah year, a person has to leave his land fallow. And when it comes to Shemitah year, his land is open for anyone to take his fruits. So let's say it happens before Shemitah. So before Shemitah says, I'm not benefiting from you, you can't benefit from me. You can't go into his field even. Let's say there was some sort of shortcut through his field. You're benefiting from his field. You can't. And you can't eat from the fruits. And the notot here are even trees that, like, let's say maybe go out of, or like their branches go out of the field in a certain way, that the bark's in the field, but it comes out of the field. So you might say maybe it's not in his field, whatever. Even that you can't benefit from. Let's say I don't go in his field. I just take from these trees that are like hanging over. Can't benefit from it.
It says he may not enter his field, but he may eat from the fruit of the branches.
No, that's you're reading ahead. The eno ochel min notot. That's the first line, right? The eno ochel. Next, uba shevi'it. What if it's during Shemitah? During Shemitah, we're not benefiting from you. You're not benefiting from me. Okay, so now what's the ruling? Eno yored l'toch. Still, you can't go into his field. It's still his field. He doesn't lose ownership. It's just that his field's open and anyone can take his fruits. So, but it's still his field. You can't walk in his field. But you're allowed to eat from these trees because in a certain way he loses ownership because of Shemitah over his fruits, and therefore, even though we're not benefiting from you, I'm benefiting from what Hashem says I'm allowed to eat, and it's not yours, so you're allowed to eat the fruits. Nadar hemenu ma'achal lifnei shevi'it yored letoch sadehu. So if you said, I'm not going to eat any food from you before Shvit, that's the only thing that we're borrowing from each other, food. So you go into this field, because that wasn't barred in the promise you made. So it's in line with the story they were saying. So if you say if the only issue is food, so then before Shemitah, you could go into this field, but you can't eat his food. On Shemitah, you could go into his field and you could eat. Because anyways, the promise was only not eating food. Yeah. Okay, excellent. Now, let's see this machloket. This is the Gemara. Rav v'Shmuel, the Amri Tarvayu. Rav and Shmuel both said the following: Nechasim elu alecha. This is a statement. My property is on you as an oath that you're not allowed to benefit. We promise a Nedarim, we can't benefit from my properties. Lifnei Shvit, if this is before Shemitah, en yored letoch sadehu, ve'eno ochel min hanotot, af al pi she'higia Shvit. This is the key difference over here that Rav and Shmuel says. These words, af al pi she'higia Shvit, even though Shvit arrived. So like this, before Shemitah, he makes this oath. You're not allowed to benefit from my properties. So any looks that you can't go into his field, you can't eat his fruit that belongs to him. And then again, that's in line with the first line of the Mishnah. Even when Shvi'it comes. So Rav and Shmuel say that now, let's say in the 6th year, say, hey, you're not allowed to benefit from my properties. So in the 6th year, you can't go into this field, you can't eat his fruit. Now that the promise is still ongoing, and now hits the 7th year, it still continues, and you can't eat his fruit, you can't go into his property. Even though, now that it's Shvi'it, the fruit is hefker, it's open for everyone. We're going to see the Ran explain, because Rav and Shmuel's explanation is because the promise started in the 6th year, where it was his fruit, it continues on even when it's not his fruit anymore. But it started from his, and it is his after Shemitah. It's going to be back to his, But because it started asur, it continues. V'im b'shvi'it nadar, and if the oath was made in the 7th year, and yored toch sadeu, aval ochel min hanotot. Same thing like we saw in the Mishnah. You can't go into his field. It's still his field, so you can't go to his field. You can benefit from his property, but you could eat the fruits. Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish, together they argue on Rav and Shmuel. Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish, the Amri Tarvai, they both say, Ichsei alecha, my properties are on you to not benefit from. So lifnei shvi'it, before Shemitah, and yored letoch sadeu, you can't go into his field, ve'enochel min hanotot, and you can't eat from those trees. Yigia shvi'it, now that Shemitah came, and yored letoch sadeu, aval ochelu et hanotot, you can't go into his field, but you could eat his fruits. So that is like our Mishnah. So we have the Machlok Rav and Shmuel versus Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Let's explain Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish because that's like our Mishnah. Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish say, if a guy makes a promise before Shemitah and says, I don't want to benefit from you. You can't benefit from my property. So now, before Shemitah, you can't go into his property and you can't eat the fruits. Now that it hits Shemitah, the fruits aren't his anymore. So you can't go into his property because it's still his property, but you could eat the fruits. Now,
isn't every owner obligated to open the field to allow anybody in?
yeah, but the property is still his. It's still the owner's. So you can't walk into his property. So the Gemara is going to ask that something later, like how do you expect, not from a neder perspective, but yeah, how do you expect the guy to get fruits if you can't walk into his property?
Someone can bring it.
Someone can bring it, or if it's hanging out. That's why the case is like hanging out. I don't need to go into his property. So the Mishnah, which is in line with Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish's explanation, is a guy makes a promise before on the 6th year, before Shemitah. He says, I don't want you to benefit from me. That means you can't come into my field. You can't eat his fruit either. Hits Shemitah, you can't go into his field, but you could eat his fruits because the fruits now is hefker. It's not his anymore. He has no jurisdiction over it. So that's Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish say like our Mishnah. But Rav and Shmuel say this interesting thing that now that you made the promise in the 6th year, it continues into the 7th. It hangs on, even though the fruits don't belong to him anymore. Because they did belong to him, it continues on, and therefore on the 6th year you can't go into his field. You can't eat his fruits. On the 7th year you can't go into his field, but you could eat his fruits. But you can't eat his fruits. Sorry, even in the 7th year you can't eat his fruits because it continues from the 6th year.
It'll be difficult to eat the fruit if you can't go into the field.
That's what we're explaining. And if that's why it's notot. I'm thinking that the trees are hanging off out of the field. Like there's a fence and
Yeah,
out.
but when
But that's
it
somebody
hang
else's
over,
field then.
If it hang over, he loses ownership.
That's why you can eat.
Yeah, that's why you.
No,
That's why
he doesn't. He doesn't lose ownership. It's not in his field.
No,
But it
I
doesn't
mean,
lose
the law
ownership.
here, if it extends over
Sorry.
to the outside the border,
It's still his.
No.
no.
Really?
I can
No,
cut the
isn't
branches.
it, Rabbi, like if the
I think
fruit
in
is
Gemara
outside
it goes
the-
where the bark is. It goes where the where the tree is. So the tree is here. So even though the thing spreads all
sure.
this.
I think if the branches go over the fence,
Then it's the other person.
that's
The other
you can eat
person.
it.
But let's okay. So assuming there's a property line, and I like between Nisim and I, there's a property line,
Okay.
right? And I have the tree, and it goes over the fence.
Okay.
Okay, and now there's apples or whatever on the
Okay.
tree. Those apples are his.
Yeah.
And that's what we're saying here, that it's not his. It's still yours based on the bark, but I could eat it even though.
But in the example, though, somebody else can go, but still, it's his property. Someone can't go on his property to get the apples. It's his apples.
No, so we're not talking about the laws of trespassing here. We're talking about the laws of a neder, and
Right.
therefore the laws of a neder is it's trespassing for me because you said I can't go into your property.
Right.
But a regular guy, there's no promise that bars me. So even if I knock on his door, hey, can I go into your property and get fruits from that tree that's
but we
hanging
know-
over? Right, I could do that.
We're not
Even
dealing with trespassing. We're dealing with a neighbor that can take the fruit because the tree is hanging over his property, not
But
other
Okay.
there's still the
Okay.
there's still the benefit from it, even though it's kind of like mine.
I will ask my question about
because he's
trespass.
the one
Let's
that
say
planted the
one
tree.
side of
No,
the
no, because he does
field
not own
is the
that
curbside
part,
or whatever.
that pla-
It's a
that-
public area.
It's not about owning, I think. It's
Yeah,
about
And isn't it the
ownership.
rule?
It's ownership.
You have to leave
That's
your
what we're
corners
talking
for the
about.
poor, so
Yeah.
that everybody can eat. Like the corner of the field doesn't belong to it. So if the branch is outside,
I can cut the branch.
you can cut the branch or you can cut the fruit.
You can cut the branch off, right?
That's the law here.
Even if it's the public area, like it doesn't belong to anyone.
You're right. Could be even in the Gemara. If it's causing a damage, maybe you're also able to. But I know in general the law is that where the bark is, because there's laws regarding what's part of Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim. Like there's a lot of laws regarding, but it goes where the bark is.
I
as
asked my
far
wife,
as the
she's an architect, she knows the law.
she knows a lot. Yeah. So
Yeah, it
so
says the produce was ownerless when he vowed, so
yeah, when he
that's
vowed,
why
right.
you can eat it from.
Yeah. So okay, back to Rav and Shmuel's explanation is a chidush type of explanation by saying that when the guy makes a neder and says, "Hey, you're not allowed to benefit from me. You're not allowed to benefit from my stuff." And this is, let's say, in year 6. So in year 6, what's happening is you can't come into this field, and you can't eat this fruit. Now going into year 7, you can't go to this field because it's this field. You might say you can eat this fruit though because it's hefker, it's the shemitah, and that's what the Mishnah says. And that's what Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish say. Says Rav and Shmuel, no, a chidush, that because I made the promise in year 6, it continues on to these fruits. These fruits a minute ago were year 6, and they're asur for you. It continues, even though now it's shemitah and it's allowed for the whole world. That promise is still on you because it's still technically somehow mine. It's going to be mine again. So that's Rav and Shmuel's opinion. Let's read the Ran. Then let's read the Ran. The Ran is the first thin line, left side. Rav Agav Sheyigesh Mi. The Kasavi Rav and Shmuel. This Ran is just going to expound on the explanations that I just said. The Kasavi Rav and Shmuel hold. The Af Agav the Kulu Peri. The Hefkera Inun. Even though all the fruits are hefker now in the 7th year, afilu hachi, nevertheless, kevan shebesha'a shehidiro, since at the moment of the time of the neder, hayu shelo, they were his fruits, chayil isura, isur is upon these fruits for this man, afilu b'shvit sheyatzu mishuto, even in shvit, even in the 7th year when it left his jurisdiction, nevertheless, because it started in his jurisdiction, the Isur still continues. Umatnitin tredini ktani. Our Mishnah teaches us 2 laws. Reisha Hashmina, the beginning of the Mishnah teaches us, the kevan shehidiro lifnei shvi'it, chayil nadre afilu kimata shvi'it. This is the chidush of Rav and Shmuel, that the neder that had started before the 7th year, it continues into the 7th year. V'seifa ashmeina, and the end of the Mishnah teaches us, de'im b'shvi'it nadar, that if he makes a neder in the 7th year, nehid lo chayal nedre legabe peri hefker aninu, since his neder doesn't work on his fruits because his fruits are hefker, they belong to the world. Legabe ara miachayal, for his land it does work. Okay, we explained that. We're going to explain the reason. Okay, that's the machlok of Rav and Shmuel and Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Back to the Gemara. We are about 2/3 down. Last one line is Derav. 3, 6, 9, 10 lines up on the bottom. Now in the middle of that line. Lema be'akamifali. Maybe, let's say this is the machloket between Rav and Shmuel versus Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish. The Rav and Shmuel Savri, Rav and Shmuel hold Adam Oser Davar Shebir Shuto Afilu Lekesheyetzem Shuto. A man can make something asur on someone else from his property even when it's going to leave his jurisdiction. That's exactly what's happening here. He's making this guy, it's asur, my fruits are asur on you in year 6, and that isur is going to continue into year 7, where it's allowed for the whole world to come and take it. It's still going to be asur on you. That's Rav and Shmuel's opinion. Rav Yochanan Rish Lakish Savri, and Adam Oser Davar Shebir. A man cannot make something asur now that it leaves your jurisdiction. It's going to leave your jurisdiction. It's gone. That nether goat flies away. It doesn't belong to you anymore, these fruits. So that's a machloket. The Gemara is gonna now say, which is I found it very interesting, like basically this chidush that we're saying from Rav and Shmuel, that you make a neder in year 6 and it continues into year 7, is in fact not such a chidush. It should be the way, says the Gemara. We're going to see. Says the Gemara, is v'tizbera? Is that so? Mi ika lemanda amar en adam oser davar shebirshuto lekesheitzeh mirshuto. Is there someone that says that when you make a promise on something in your jurisdiction, it does not stay like that after it leaves your jurisdiction? It should always, the promise should always be there. And now the Gemara is going to ask a question. So, first we're saying, is that so? That people don't hold of Rav and Shmuel? It should be more the obvious that it does continue. And im ken, and if so, niflegi b'nechasim elu, v'kol sheken b'nechasai. Okay, so the Gemara here is saying the following, and this is maybe I didn't want to point it out before. I see no one pointed it out, but there's a big difference what's going on over here. And this is actually going to be somewhat of the answer of the Gemara. If you look closely, when the Gemara started, Rav Shmuel de Amri Taravayu Nechasim Elu Alecha. These properties are asur on you. Later, when we quote Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish, de Amri Taravayu Nechasai Alecha. My properties are asur on you. There's a difference. Nechasim Elu. These properties are asur on you, or my properties are asur on you. Okay, so what's the difference? The difference is when you say my properties are asur on you, my properties can only be asur on you so long as they're my properties. If they're not my properties anymore, then it loses the ability to be asur on you. But when I say these properties are asur on you, then these are asur on you all the time. Doesn't matter when.
They're not his.
No, so they start off as mine. I can only do it when it's mine. But when I said these properties are asur on you, yes, they're mine, but what I'm stressing is these properties are asur on you. Then it holds, because it's mine, I have the ability to do so. But it could even hold after the neder switches to, let's say, Shemitah. Because when I started, I said these properties are asur on you. But if I say my properties are asur on you, that will only work so long as they're mine.
And is it time-based, or is it just till Shemitah?
Time-based, or I sell it, or Shemitah.
Let's
You can't
say,
track it forever, I guess, right? You can't just, like, it's 80 years after, you can't just track what items are anyway.
plus I will say something
I
else,
would
like
assume.
assume this is year 49 of your, like 48 of your well, and
that's
2
the
years
Yovel.
later, the property will go back to the original, and you are not the original. Let's assume that
Right.
it's not your family. Then how can you make a neder?
So if you say nechas, the difference between nechasai and nechasim. So in that example, perfectly, nechasai, my properties are asur on you. That's it. Once it's yovel, it's gone. If I say nechasim elu, these properties are asur. Now it's mine at the
I
time that I
understand,
make
but-
it, but
Well,
now
how come you can
that's
make it
that's
forever?
Rav and Shmuel. Let's say it could continue on. Rav and Shmuel could say it could
Let's
continue
say
on.
it comes back to me. How can you make it
It's
asur
something
on me?
asur to you, and it's on
yeah,
you.
Maybe yeah.
It belongs back to you.
Yeah. How, like, for example,
Yeah,
there is a
yeah.
mahloket between two people.
And I
Like,
know it's
1
going
year
back
be-
to you.
Yeah, and 1 year before you say that. So how come? Like,
Right.
Isn't there like a better
Maybe
to get out of the nether that way?
I think
You can get out of the nether
Yeah.
that way, in a way, because there's like a petach,
a
right?
petach.
Get
No,
out.
but I think actually what Nisim is saying a strong point, and I think that it won't work for me to do that because now it's yours. But I think our case is what, that it goes to hefker. It doesn't in Shemitah. In year 6, this is my fruit. In year 7, it's everyone's fruit. But really, everyone's fruit means it's no one's fruit. No one owns it.
okay.
It's everyone's fruit. So I could it's still kind of mine because it's going to come back to me after in year 8. It's going to come back to me. Or
If
year,
it will,
year
be,
1 again.
we don't know that.
No,
There is a
no,
case
no,
that
this is-
maybe it's not going to come back to you.
No, it's just my property. I'm not selling it.
No, maybe it's for your property since you till Yoel. Maybe it will
No,
go
okay,
back
we're
to
not talking
somebody
about
else.
Yovel right now.
I understand
In
your
the
point.
Yovel case or in a selling case, it goes to someone else. But that's why I'm saying. That's why I think you're right in your question, as opposed to this case is a different case because it's going to come back to me afterwards in year 1.
So we are assuming.
Year 8. Yeah. So therefore, when I'm saying in year 6, this is a sur on you, Nisim. Now it goes into year 7. That could continue because it's not going. It doesn't belong to Mr. Bigzer now. It doesn't belong to anyone else now. It belongs to. Going to come back to me. So that's what I think. But you're raising a good point. So the Gemara is asking over here, 4 lines up on the bottom, is like this, that the difference in nechasim and nechasai is my properties, nechasim are these properties. So my properties could only last for as long as they're mine. These properties could last even longer. Let's say, again, shmita, etc. So the question is a question on Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish, a question on so Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish says a person does not, you can't make something asur going forward. Once it turns shmita, it's gone. So, the way to properly say that is when you say, when I say nechasim, if I would say these nechasim, these properties are asur on you, and now we're going into the 7th year. And I'm saying, as Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish, it stops. You can't make it asur on him anymore. That it's stronger to say nechasim than nechasai. Nechasai is obvious. My property is asur on you. Now that's not your properties anymore. For sure, it's not asur on me because it's shmita. But if I say nechasim, these properties are going to be asur on you. And now Rav Yochanan say, sorry sir, come Shemitah, it's cut off. They're not asur on him. It's stronger to say, in a case of nechasim, these properties are asur, and then halt it, sorry, at year 7, they're not asur anymore. It's stronger to say that than say nechasai, because my properties are asur. Yeah, it's not your property anymore at year 7. So therefore the question on Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish is, they should have said nechasim. And if you look at the wording by Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish, nechasai alecha. They should have said nechasim. It would have been a stronger chidush. Imken niflegi benechasim elu v'kol sheken benechasai. They should have said nechasim, and all the more so, I would have learned the case of nechasai. That's question number 1 on Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Question number 2, 3 lines up on the bottom. The 2, in addition, Hatanan, we learned in the Mishnah. The Adam oser davar shebeshuto, the kishiyetze beshuto. There's a Mishnah that tells us a person could make something asur from now going into something that is not his jurisdiction anymore. It's still going to be asur. What's the case? The Tanan. Haomer livno. A person tells his kid, Kunam shata ne'anitli. A person tells his kid, I don't want you to benefit from me. I don't want you to benefit from me. Met irashenu. When the father dies, he's still allowed to inherit him. He's still allowed to inherit him. So the Run points out, it's interesting, that he's not benefiting from the person.
It's a Torah law.
Exactly. You're benefiting from the Torah law that allows you to take your father's property, to get your father's properties afterwards. So you're benefiting from Hashem's rule. You're not benefiting from him. Okay. But now if a person says, Bechayavu bemoto. I don't want you to benefit. If a father tells his son, I don't want you to benefit from me, not when I'm alive and not when I'm dead. Next page. Imet lo yirashenu. So if the guy dies, he does not inherit him. The son does not inherit. You see from here that a person could make this neder go on beyond the time that he owns the object. Let's say it's a watch. So he says, this is my whole inheritance, this watch.
Only if he has a will that says so.
No, he said. Let's say he has no will even, but this is what he says that he's doing, and he makes a neder. There's witnesses. Let's say.
Unwritten will.
Then it goes with witnesses. Then it goes as he says. So let's say the person's all his property is this watch, right? So if he says, I don't want you to benefit from me, the guy dies, he benefits. He could benefit from him because he's not benefiting from him. He's benefiting from Hashem's rule. When the guy says, I don't want you to benefit while I'm alive and while I'm dead, so there he cannot inherit him. You see from here that this ownership of this watch, of this inheritance, is his while he's alive. When he's dead, it's over. Yet he could still bind himself to the stuff that he owns after he's dead, and the kid can't benefit from it. You see from here, like Rav and Shmuel, that you could say, I make a neder that this is going to be asur on you, and this isur continues even when it's out of my jurisdiction. So this is a double question on Rav Rish Lakish and Rav Yochanan. Answers the Gemara, Shani Hacha, here is different. The Ka'amar bechayav b'moto. Gemara says, don't compare this case of inheritance to our Gemara case. You know why? Because this case, the guy explicitly said, I don't want you to benefit from me while I'm alive and while I'm dead. So he explicitly said it. That's understood that you can't benefit from me. He never explicitly said it. He says, don't benefit from my items. Don't benefit from my property. We're saying it's continuing on even after into the Shemitah. So you can't compare the two cases. Says the Gemara, Mikol Makom Kashya. So, says the Gemara, nevertheless, it's a question. Nevertheless, we have the first question. The first question was, why didn't Rav Yochanan and Rav Rish Lakish say Nechasim? They said Nechasai. Should have said Nechasim. Nechasim is more of a chidush. Says the Gemara. An answer. Nechasim elu kule alma lo pligi. If the guy would have said Nechasim, guy says, I don't want you to benefit from these properties. Nobody argues. Everybody agrees that the Isur is going to pass on. The guy says, I don't want you to benefit from these properties. Everyone agrees to Rav and Shmuel that the Isur is going to pass on. Ki pligi. So when do they argue? When's the case of a machloket between Rav and Shmuel and Rish Lakish and Yochanan? When do they argue? Ki pligi. Benechasai. When do they argue? And the guy says, my properties. Don't benefit from my properties. Rav and Shmuel Savri. Rav and Shmuel hold. Loshla nechasim elu. Loshla nechasai. Doesn't matter what you said. My properties, these properties, Adam Oser. A man can make this item be asur beyond when he's not even when he's not the owner anymore. Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish Savri, no. Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish say no. Savri nechasim. Adam Oser. Nechasai and Adam Oser. Person says, these properties are asur on you, that means it's going to continue on even when you lose ownership, even when it goes to Shemitah. Nechasai, my properties, it's not your property anymore. You can't make it asur on it. So it's Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish that make a difference between Nechasim and Nechasai. Rav and Shmuel said, no, there's no difference. Nechasim, Nechasai, it's always going to pass on afterward. The Gemara continues. 6 lines down. Umi ika lemanda amar loshna nechasim elu veloshna nechasai. Is there an opinion that says there's no difference between nechasim and nechasai? That's the question now in Rav and Shmuel. Umi ika lemandar. Is there an opinion that says loshna nechasim elu veloshna nechasai? There's no difference in Nechasim and Nechasai. That's Rav and Shmuel. Is there such an opinion? Ve'atanan, we learned in the Mishnah. Ha'omer l'chavero, a person tells his friend, Konam letoch betecha, shani nichnas. So, this is what we're going to learn later on Daf Mem Vav. A person makes a neder on his friend. I don't want you to come into betecha, into your house. Sadecha, shani lokeach, your field that I'm going to take. That you're not allowed to take my field. You're not allowed to come to my house. You're not allowed to take my field. Met, if the guy died, or he sold it to someone else, mutar. You're allowed not to go into that guy's house. You're allowed to go into the guy's house.
This is a lot of Hebrew, by the way.
Yeah.
Sadecha, sadeh.
Yeah. That's the next piece. Labait ze shani nichnas, sadeh zu shani lokeach, meta shemachar l'acher asur. This is interesting, by the way. This is against what you're saying, Nisim. This is a chidush also. Here he says like this. The guy says, labait ze, meaning, I don't want you to come into this house. I don't want you to come into this field. The guy dies, or he sells the field, or he sells the house. You still can't go in.
But do we go by this?
I don't know. This is a quote of the Mishnah. We'll get into it more in Daf Memvav. Remember, page 46. So like this. The Gemara asks a question. Is there a mandamar that says nechasai and nechasim are the same? That's Rav and Shmuel says nechasim and nechasai are the same. Is that so? Nechasim and nechasai are the same? I'll show you from a Mishnah later on that they're not the same. What's the Mishnah? The Mishnah says when a person says, I don't want you to come into betecha or sadecha, your field, I'm not coming into your house, your field. Once it's not his house anymore, once it's not his field anymore, you can go in. But when a guy says to this house, to this field, even if he dies, even if he sells it, he can't go in. So you see there's a difference between nechasai and nechasim. There's a difference between betecha or bait zeh. There's a difference. Question of Rav and Shmuel. Now the answer is gonna be a nice harmonious answer of unity, and the answer is Ella. Ki amri Rav Yochanan Rish Lakish b'nechasai v'Rav Shmuel b'nechasim elu v'lo pligi. You're gonna answer something amazing. He says no, it's a rare case. Usually, there's machloket till the bitter end. Here, no, it's peace. What's the peace? It's not a machloket. Rish Lakish and Rav Yochanan versus Rav and Shmuel. The whole time we said that Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish say nechasai nechasim. There's no difference. There is a difference. Rav and Shmuel said there's no difference. Says the Gemara. You know why? If you look back at the case, we said the case of Rav and Shmuel was nechasim. The case of Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish was nechasai. Says the Gemara that those were the only two cases they were talking about. They actually agree to one another. That's the answer.
I don't understand why he says
why earlier there's a question.
Like here, what does it look? Who said that they actually disagree here?
At the beginning, you're saying, right? At the when they were quoted.
Yeah.
That's so. That's what we're answering now. Like at first we were thinking that maybe it's kind of the same. Says the Gemara. The case of Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish was nechasai, meaning, and Rav Shmuel b'nechasim elu, and the case of Rav and Shmuel were in the case of nechasim, and they're not arguing on one another. Let's explain. So the case of nechasai is these are my properties. You're not allowed to have benefit from my properties. It's nechasai. The moment they're not my properties anymore, then you can benefit from them. So, Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish, who said, we said before, you can't make something asur going forward into Shemitah. It's not yours anymore. Well, they said that because the whole case that they were talking about was the wording the guy said was nechasai, my properties. You're right, when it's not Shemitah anymore, it's not your properties. So that's what Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish say. And actually, Rav and Shmuel would agree to that, if you say nechasai. And you know what the case of Rav and Shmuel was? It was nechasim elu. When they said, these properties you can't benefit from. These properties means forever and ever, these properties. Maybe until they get to someone else's hands, whatever. That's not a discussion for now, but these properties are asur. Nechasim elu. These properties, that continues on. That's Rav and Shmuel's opinion. It continues on, even in Shemitah. Rish Lakish and Rav Yochanan would say, I agree to that. Because Rish Lakish and Rav Yochanan weren't talking about nechasim. They were talking about nechasai. My property only ends once if I don't have ownership anymore, like Shemitah, that's it, it's done. So basically each one agrees to each other. Unbelievable. 2 dots. Ubashevi'it en yored letoch sadeu. It says on the Shemitah, you can't go into his field. It says, why can you eat? So why can you eat his fruit? Why can you eat the fruit? That's what I was asking. If you can't go into this property, why can you eat the fruit? The peri, the hefker, because the fruit is hefker, it's shmita. You're allowed to eat the fruit. It's hefker. And you can't walk into this property, but you can eat the fruit. Says the Gemara, Ara nami afkera. Hold on a second. The land is also hefker. Meaning, the Gemara wants to say like this. The land is also hefker. Not that I can now go and own it and run into someone's land and say, hey, I own it. No. The land is also hefker that you're allowed to walk in. Can't you walk in and get how else are you expected to go in and get the fruit? So, the Gemara is going to give us now two answers, but I just want to preface that this question of how is he going to get the fruits? It's the land is hefker. This is not a question for a regular case. Meaning, our case is a case where it's a neder made. A neder, don't come into my property. Now that neder extends into shmita. In a regular case, it says there's no neder. Hit shmita. I want to go into the guy's backyard and get fruits. I'm allowed to walk in and get his fruits. Oh no trespassing. You get the fruits, but you can't trespass. That's not what's going on over here. Meaning, you're allowed to go in because the land is hefker, meaning the land is hefker. Not that you could steal my ownership of my land. No, that's always the owner's the guy, right? Then everyone's going to go around stealing people's lands, and it's not his either because he can't steal land because the land is ownerless on. So you're allowed to walk into people's lands. You're allowed to take their fruits. Here, it's because there's an oath made. You can't benefit from me walking into my land. This is actually my land, so therefore you can't benefit from my land. You can't walk in. So now the Gemara is asking, how do you get the fruits? Fine, I can't walk in. In a case of a neder, not in a case of a regular shemitah. A regular shemitah, you can walk in. Case of a neder. So now that's the Gemara's question. So how do you eat the fruits? Amar ula be'omdim ilanot ala gvulin. The trees are on the border. So the trees are on the border. I'm not walking to your land. I'm just eating the trees from the border. Easy. Says the next answer. Rav Shimon ben Eliakim, Omer, Amar gzera shema yasheh ba'amida. There is a gezerah that maybe you might stay standing there.
Like benefiting.
Hang on a second.
Past the Shemitah.
You passed the a lot of time that you need. Meaning like this. The first answer of Ula is, you're right. When you make a neder, guy, don't benefit from my land. Now hit Shemitah. So the guy says, hey, I want to come and get your fruits. Sorry, you can't come into my land. How do I get the fruits? Answer number one is, go to the ones that are on the border. Because there's a neder in place over here. You can't walk into the guy's land. Second answer is, no, you're allowed technically to go into the guy's land, even when there's a neder, because it's Shemitah, it's hefker. But you might stay on the land longer than you need to get the fruits, and now you're benefiting from his land. Meaning, when I'm going to go in and get the fruits and run out, okay, I understand. You're allowed to walk to my land just to get the fruits and come out. That's Shemitah. You stand around a little more, relax a little bit. Oh, now you're benefiting from the land. You can't. So therefore, because we don't want you to benefit from the land, because you have a neder in place over here, can't go into the land.
Maybe also.
As it's going on over
would,
here.
using the land as a shortcut be benefiting?
Would also, yeah, of course we benefit. Yeah. Okay, Chazaku Baruch, we did it. We even got 2 more minutes till 9:30. So we got so generous, generous today.
I don't know what we deserve. We did in our life to deserve you, Rabbi.
After you became a celebrity,
Yeah.
you became.
I'll keep those parts on the recording also.